Hello, class. This is Miss Mooney, and today we're going to talk about describing setting and plot elements. In our last mini lesson, we studied how Eleanor's response to challenges showed us her character. Those challenges are an important part of the plot of Angelfish. In fact, one of those challenges was the setting of the story itself. Today, we'll look more deeply into setting and plot, two important elements of fiction. Understanding the importance of setting on a story and also plot, how a story is structured, one are key for readers getting the most from fiction and books. Today we'll analyze how setting affects characters and events in a story. Clearly understanding this lets readers gain a deeper understanding of the story as a whole. We'll also continue looking at how plot, the main events, the conflict, and the resolution shape the way stories are told. So for the introduction of Angelfish, it is taken from a chapter book, and this introduction gives me information about setting and plot events that have happened earlier in the book. And the introduction, just to remind you, says Eleanor hates everything about camp except her friend Joplin. She hates the food, the activities, the bugs, and mostly swimming. She wants to get out of the guppy group. I read that the story takes place at camp, and the main character, Eleanor, hates camp, especially swimming. This is the setting, and the setting creates conflict. Eleanor really wants to advance out of the babyish guppy camp. To learn more about the setting, I can look at the picture on page 15 right here. It's obviously summertime. The camp is on a lake surrounded by pine trees, and it looks like it's a girls' camp. Time of year is an important part of setting also. Eleanor wouldn't have to take swim classes in the winter. So now we're going to reread this story. I still had to go to swim lessons though, and after our 7th lesson, our teacher tested us to see who could move on beyond guppy. I worked so hard during that test. So I'm going to underline some important parts of our story. I'm going to underline I worked so hard. This gives us some context of her character. I'm going to underline that she did it, and I'm going to underline our setting. So we have camp and swimming. All right, let's keep reading. I worked so hard during that test to breathe just right and show my teacher a strong kick. I was determined to tread water the longest, and I did it. I pedaled a bike very slowly, just like Joplin had taught me, and outlasted all the other guppies, only by 6 seconds, but still, I did it. Congratulations, my teacher said to me after I'd swum back to the dock. You are officially an angelfish. My whole cabin had been hovering when she said that because I'd told Joplin about the test, and she told everyone else. They all jumped up and down and cheered for me. The big conflict and plot is the swim test and earlier events that have been leading up to it. I see Eleanor has been working hard getting ready for it, and she succeeds. The conflict is resolved, which means the problem is solved. Now we're going to look at our anchor chart that talks more about the elements of fiction. So there are 5 elements of fiction that we are going to talk about. We have setting that we talked about today, where and when the story takes place, the plot, what happens, the main events, the theme, the message the author wants to share with readers, conflict, challenges that characters must respond to, and characters, the people and animals in the story. I've just shown you how I think about setting and plot when I read fiction, especially the effect they have on characters. Now we are going to circle this sentence right here. Let's look for it. We're gonna circle right here when it says, "And after our 7th lesson, our teacher tested us." Because we are going to talk about why you think the author wanted to include, um, this detail, so I'm actually gonna make it a little bit bigger to include the rest of the sentence. Why the author wanted to include this detail in the story and what the detail of after our 7th lesson, our teacher tested us to see who could move on. What context we can gather from that um, on Eleanor and what that tells us about our conflict and our characters. So there's going to be a question that asks how the particular date of the seventh test um, gives us what that tells us about the plot of the story. So the exact date of the story gives us more of a context about the plot and how this has been leading up, how they've had 7 lessons that the teacher has given them, and how over the course of those 7 lessons, Eleanor has become a better swimmer and is able to be tested out of the guppy group. This gives us more details because the day is important to Eleanor as she has been learning about swimming and is now ready to take her test. Now I've shown you how I identify the setting and using illustrations and the text, how it affects characters and plot events in a story. Your job now is to do the same while you read. As you read, identify the setting and mark it with sticky notes or write it down so you don't forget. When setting affects characters and events, also mark those moments with sticky notes or underline them or highlight them, whatever you would like to do. Be prepared to share your findings um, whenever you're reading.